team, Kate, Lincoln-Goldfinch here with you on Tuesdays in English to talk through immigration news of the week, answer your live questions, have a little conversation around immigration things, talk about updates from my campaign if you want to hear, and I'll give you an action tip of a way that you can get involved civically for the week. So to help combat that feeling of what the hell can I do to help in times like these? So, and as you can probably tell, I'm not in my usual location. We are on the bus, el bus sin fronteras. We're going to North Austin, and we're going to be parking the bus this morning at a little grocery store in North Austin to share with you guys about this little store. It's up near 45 in Round Rock, and so we'll be hanging out there this morning, and we're on the bus. So that's what we're up to today. Let me get to the news of the week. Before I do that, just to remind you guys, of course, I'm an immigration lawyer based in Texas. My law firm is virtual, and we are providing free legal consultations around the United States. So if you need information or legal advice related to an immigration case, just DM me and we can get you scheduled for a consultation. Let's get to the news of the week. There's, of course, as per the usual, been plenty. The first is a bit of disappointing news out of the Supreme Court, which is not a surprise. They're just being bonkers. So the Supreme Court is unlike regular appellate courts in that it can decide what cases it wants to hear or not. And this is called granting cert or certiorari. I think it's certiorari. I can't remember the Latin of my law school days, but it's granting cert. It means we will take this case up. We think that it deserves our attention, and we agree to hear this appeal. And I think most of us thought that the birthright citizenship stuff was kind of dead in the water, because the Supreme Court did have a case on whether lower courts could issue nationwide injunctions blocking policies that was through the vehicle of the birthright citizenship case. But it just seemed really clear otherwise that birthright citizenship, and that's what I've been sharing with you guys in presentations. Like, we don't have to worry about that. Well, the Supreme Court scheduled their calendar for next year, and they granted cert on the birthright citizenship case. So what that means is that the Supreme Court is going to give space and attention to the question of whether the president can cancel birthright citizenship by executive order. And we aren't going to know how the court is going to decide until next June or so. So it is up in the air. I do still feel very confident that ultimately the Supreme Court is not going to allow a revocation by executive order of something that is an amendment to the Constitution. I mean, that would be wild, like really wild, like wilder than anything we've seen so far in the court system. So I still think that there's hope, but the fact that they cert to this case is like what the hell? What the hell? Supreme Court. Number two, this is about the Somali population in Minnesota. So Somalia, very terrible place in a lot of ways, like a lot of violence, haven't had a functioning government in 30 years, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of refugees from Somalia. And in order to become a refugee, someone has to flee their land and prove through a series of interviews, like at the UN or a refugee camp, that they merit protection, that they have been persecuted in their country. And we have a big population of Somali refugees, obviously from Somalia, who have relocated to Minnesota, which I've always thought was a wild thing anyway, because like the climate of Somalia and Minnesota is very, very different. And I've often wondered, like, how is it for a Somali person to go from the hot desert to the barren frozen tundra of Minnesota? But nonetheless, there is a huge population of now, multi-generations of Somali refugees. So there are refugees who have gotten citizenship and they've had children here. And this is, a decades old entrenched community. very beloved in many parts of the state. Simultaneously, during COVID, there were a few fraudsters who defrauded the government with benefit programs. So there were like food benefit programs for people who needed support or assistance during the pandemic. And the way it was distributed was through the state of Minnesota. And there are some unscrupulous fraudsters, some of whom are Somali, who entered into these schemes to start receiving payments from the state when they weren't actually distributing food. And this went relatively unchecked because it was around the same time as the George Floyd murder and the riots in Minnesota, specifically around racial injustice by the police. So there was a lot of political sensitivity within the state about saying anything or pushing back whatsoever on communities of color. So that fear within the state and the bureaucrats within the state allowed these bad actors to go unchecked and steal millions of dollars from the state of Minnesota. So that's the storyline. But of course, it's just a few people. It is not the entire nation of population from Somalia in Minnesota. Like, the two things are completely disconnected. But the Trump administration, in the way that they do, after the National Guards were murdered in DC, the Trump administration looks to blame and retaliate, and they don't care if they're accurate in their aim. So the Somali refugee population in Minnesota becomes the victims of the Trump administration's ire over what happened in Washington, D.C. So there are raids going on in Minnesota against the Somali community, and the governor of Minnesota, politicians from Minnesota are all speaking out against what's happening and in support of the Somali community. So that's what's happening in Somalia, Minnesota, and the backstory there. Okay, next thing is about Iran. There are deportation flights resuming from the U.S. to Iran. We have not deported for many, many years. I don't know when it began, but it's been decades, I think. And there are concerns, of course, about the removals to Iran and what's going to happen to the Iranian nationals who are sent back. But nonetheless, deportations have resumed to Iran. Concerning, there's a lot of Iranian people who have been in the United States for a long, long, long time. And maybe they had gotten orders of supervision or not, but they've been in this country for decades. I mean, you guys might have seen one of my videos. I was at a rally and I played the audio from the wife of an Iranian man who came here when he was 1 year old and married this woman and started a big business and had kids. It's like that, like very entrenched folks who are being sent back to Iran to danger. So we'll be watching that closely. And then finally, the last news item is related to just the impact of this crackdown nationwide on schools. Enrollment is down significantly, which really impacts school district funding to the tune of like millions and millions of dollars. So this is going to be very problematic for our public schools that we're having reduced enrollment in our public school systems. Okay, I see your questions coming in. Keep them coming. I will start with Willie Gonzalez. This is a Spanish one, so I'll read it in Spanish and then I'll do it again in English. ¿Puede la gente o uno mismo ir directamente a la oficina de usted o tiene que ser forzosamente en línea por teléfono las consultas? No. Sí tenemos citas en personas. De hecho, preferimos citas en persona porque podemos conocernos un poco mejor. Pero sí, tenemos espacio para unos como 15 citas en persona diario en la oficina. So sí tenemos espacio. The question from Willie is, do we have to do virtual appointments or can we do in-person appointments? And I said, no, we love in-person appointments. In some ways, we like them better. It's easier to get to know each other. And we have about 15 appointments a day in the office. The rest are virtual. So if you're within driving distance of our Austin office, we'd love for you to come in for your appointment. Okay, from Instagram, deportado. I was deported even with an I-918A, applied without a crime. Is it possible to return? I have a 2-year-old son born in the United States. Yes. So the 918A is a U visa application. It's a crime victims visa application. And one of the great things about it, there are many, is that it applies to someone who's in the United States or out of the United States. So if you apply for a U visa and you get deported or you decide to leave, when it gets approved, you can come back. And that's one of the things that I tell people who come to me and say, like, why should I apply? I might just go home. What if I get deported? And it's like, well, this is a great type of case to have because it'll get you back legally once it gets approved. And a good news item on the U visas is that we're seeing work permits on those come relatively quickly as compared to the past. It used to take like 4 or 5 years, and now it's about 1.5 years just to get a work permit. So those are moving faster. And that brings up something I want to share with you guys because it's so doom and gloom, right? And the immigration states and the fear and the impact. But what I want to say is we are still getting cases approved all the time. The immigration system is not broken down by the president. Yes, they're going after people. Yes, they're kidnapping people on the streets. Yes, all that is terrible and horrible. And folks who are applying for status through employment, through family, through humanitarian cases, we're still getting approved. And in some cases, approved much more quickly than in the past. Like some green card cases are being approved within 3 or 4 months. So don't give up, don't despair. Get a consultation with a lawyer as soon as you can. If you are an immigrant, please consult with a lawyer. And I'll take this moment to remind you guys that we have a program at my firm called Luz en el Camino, or Light on the Pathway. This is a program specifically for people who are undocumented and who are ineligible to get legal status, but you want to have a relationship with a lawyer. And the way that this program works is you pay an annual fee to be our client. We'll provide you with a letter of representation. We'll provide you with a list of documents that we need to collect from you. We'll give you a strategy session with an attorney, and then we'll have a VIP service available to you if something happens, if you have a question or you get picked up. And so this is a way that you can form a relationship with a law firm, even if you're not eligible to apply for a green card, and you can feel more protected and like you know who to call in case there's an emergency. Ceviche Mommy, DACA updates, still waiting. Decision should be any day. I would have expected before the end of November. So like really literally any day. And of course, the minute the decision comes down, it'll be all over social media, but I'll do a video on it explaining it as soon as it happens too. Anna, or AAA on TikTok. If an officer says they will recommend approval after the I-730 interview, what happens next? That's great. Then you should get the approval notice in your portal online pretty quickly, usually within like 72 hours. If it's something that has to be reviewed by a supervisor, so you'll want to keep checking the portal and keep checking your mail. And then you get to move forward with legal status for your loved one. But congratulations, that's great. I mean, an I-730 means you've already been through a long process, right? All the way through the asylum process, and now you're petitioning a relative. So congrats. All right, I was brought to the U.S. when I was 4 years old, and I'm now 31. I have 2 older half-siblings on my father's side and 2 younger half-siblings on my mother's side. I am a DACA recipient, but with DACA status in limbo, I am concerned. All 4 of my siblings were born in Texas. Is there any possibility for me to get a green card through them? So yes, citizen siblings can petition for their brothers or sisters, and half brothers or sisters are included. The problem is that the wait time is so long. So if you're Mexican, the wait time is 25 years for your visa to become available. So it's not a solution for right now. What I would recommend is that we have a consultation and talk about other options that are available to you. I want to talk through, your immigration history, your family history, your work history, all of that in a confidential consultation, and then we'll know what we can do for you. Okay, Nessa Luna, time frame on VAWA cases. I just checked this a couple of days ago. I'm trying to remember. I want to say it was like 18 months in total. Should be like 6 to 9 months for the work permit if you apply for what's called a one-step, the green card and the VAWA. But the VAWA itself is like 18 months, maybe up to 2 years. Yeah. The thing that we're seeing in VAWA is that it's taking a long time to get a receipt notice. We have a case it's been 6 months and we haven't gotten a receipt notice, and I don't love that. But it should be 18 months in total for VAWA. Okay, Ceviche Mami, funding for a lawyer. Okay, let's talk through that, because you're right. Private lawyers like me, we have to charge for our services. It can be expensive. So what do you do about that? Well, number one, if you know that you are an immigrant and you need services, start prioritizing that expense in your life. Maybe it's not the time to go hog wild on Christmas gifts or get a new car that you've been wanting, or some of the things that you don't actually need. Start putting money away for a rainy day fund instead, because it's much, much better to have secure legal status than things, of course. So that's number one. Number two, at our firm, we do payment plans. So most of our cases, depending on the case type, but most of the cases you can start with a payment of $1,000 and then monthly payments to pay off the rest of the legal fees. And then if that's too high of an initial payment, we also work with a couple of nonprofits that loan money specifically to immigrants for immigration cases. One of those is called BYD Cash. I don't know what that stands for, but those are some options. In the past, it was possible to seek legal services from nonprofit agencies. Like in Austin, there's a lot. There's Raíces, there's American Gateways, Justice for Our Neighbors, Catholic Charities. There's a handful of nonprofit legal service providers that charge nothing, or they charge like low fees, and they're very good. My first legal job out of law school was at American Gateways. I learned how to be an immigration lawyer there. The problem is that they already had limited availability for cases. And now it's even worse because these organizations historically have depended primarily on grant funding from the government. And Trump has canceled all that grant funding. So the organizations that have historically been able to provide free or at least low-cost legal services, they've had to cut all their staff, lay people off. They don't have capacity. So at a time when the need is the greatest, the available free services are the lowest. And that just is an unfortunate reality, which is all the more reason if you know you might need services to save money. I'll also just give a shout out to the immigrant community. I love how supportive and community oriented our immigrant clients are. And if somebody needs help, they need bond, or they need something like that, the way that people come together and help each other out is really awesome to see. So also think about your community and fortify yourself socially. This is an aside from legal advice, but I recently attended a panel on health. It was a women's conference, And there was an author who was speaking, and she said, we talk about and we know about physical health and mental health, but the third is how supportive is the community. Do you have friends? Do you have family members? The message of the night is like, yeah, times are hard, and let's stick together, because that's how we're going to make it through these hard times. Okay, Nessa Luna, you applied in 2022 and your work permit expired in July and no update. Well, we need to renew your work permit. So let's do a consultation, because you should have your work permit renewed. And that's too long to be waiting, I think. So we could also do a case status inquiry. Okay. Oh, another thing I want to just note for you guys, we heard some reports. We didn't have any hearings yesterday in our own caseload, but we heard some reports from the legal community that ICE was at the courthouse again in San Antonio yesterday, detaining people. So just a note that that's still going on. There are some areas of the country where the courts have told ICE they can't arrest people at the courthouse. Like there was an order in New York, and I think more of these orders are coming out. We don't have such an order in Texas, and in San Antonio just yesterday, we heard that ICE was there at the courthouse. So just want to note that you guys should be aware of that and be cautious, and, talk to a lawyer, see if you can appear virtually. Don't just, go to court and see what happens. We don't want that for you. Make sure you're prepared and you have a lawyer. Of course, you do have to go. Otherwise, you'll get deported in absentia, and then they'll come and find you at your house. But there are ways that we can protect you on the front end. Okay, how can I file a motion to ask the judge for more time, and how does that process work? So what you're asking for, it's a motion for continuance, and you need to have a good reason. So often when you hire a lawyer, the first thing that we're going to do, especially if you hired us really quickly before the first hearing, is we'll ask for attorney prep time. So we'll go in and say we need more time, and the judge will give us one continuance. But there's also other reasons for continuance, like if you have an illness or something like that, and we would file a motion with the court, and it would be up to the judge to decide. Okay. If I have a pending asylum case, is it risky to travel on a domestic flight in the U.S. right now? I have a trip planned, but I'm scared and I don't know if I should cancel. I don't think you should go. I'm sorry to say that, but enough people with pending asylum cases are being detained that it's clear that DHS does not consider pending asylum a protected status that keeps you from being detained. And we know that there are lots of patrols going on at the airports, CBP, et cetera. Like that young woman who's from Austin, Annie, she was in Boston. She was in college in Boston, and she was to visit her family in Texas as a surprise. She was surprising them. And she got detained at the airport, and they sent her to Honduras within 48 hours. Like they didn't even give time for a judge to rule on her case. So the cases like that are an example of like, yes, CBP is in, or DHS, I don't know which agency it is, but some, immigration law enforcement agency is patrolling the airports and detaining people, and pending asylum is not protection enough to keep from being detained. That also applies to checkpoints. So also don't go to immigration checkpoints if you don't have a green card or citizenship. That means like no going down to South Padre for vacation over Christmas if you live in Texas, if all you have is a work permit, because you can get detained at the checkpoint. Pablo, case status. You want a case status, and let me look into this for you, Pablo, and then we'll DM you. Feel free to DM me too, you guys. And we'll look into it and make sure we get back to you. We got a couple more questions, and then I'm going to give you your action tip. We're almost to the restaurant. I don't know if you can see my husband, Josh, driving the bus back there, our trusty bus driver. I want to see if I can schedule a consultation with you about traveling with DACA. Heck yeah, let's do it. Send me a DM. I have conditional residency category CR6. Could I have any issues at the airport when re-entering the United States? Not if it's valid and unexpired. So if you have a 2-year green card, a valid passport from your country, you're good to travel. You don't need anything else. But if it's expired, of course, then you could have problems. I applied for my green card 210 days ago, but my driver's license expires in January and I can't renew it. Still waiting for residency. What I don't understand is why they won't renew your license or extend it through March. What did DPS tell you they wouldn't extend it through March? That seems like something that should be escalated to the supervisor at DPS. That's a DPS question, but they are known to make up rules on the spot. Okay, Carla, hola. This is Spanish. I'll read it in Spanish and then English, and then I'm going to give you guys your action tip. ¿Cómo puede ayudar a las personas que no tienen opciones para arreglar? Tiene oportunidad de ayudar a la comunidad de alguna manera. Si ya nos han dicho que no podemos arreglar, ¿existe algo para nosotros? Gracias por la pregunta. Sí. Tenemos ese programa Luz en el Camino. Este es un programa de nosotros a la comunidad inmigrante indocumentada que no puede arreglar en este momento, pero para las personas que quieren tener protección y una relación con un despacho. Con ese programa Luz en el Camino le damos una carta de representación que dice que son clientes de nosotros. Tenemos una sesión de estrategia con un abogado. Le damos un paquete de seguridad con una lista de documentos importantes y nosotros podemos colectar esos documentos y guardarlos en su expediente. Y al final tenemos una línea especial para nuestros clientes de Luz en el Camino en caso de que algo pase. Es un programa de protección para personas que no pueden arreglar. This question was about the people who aren't eligible for legal status right now, but they want to have some protection. What can you do? That's why we created our program, Luz en el Camino, or Light on the Pathway. This is a program for people who are undocumented and don't have any option to obtain legal status right now. With this program, you pay a fee to become our client, and then we're going to give you a letter of representation that says you are our client. We're going to give you a safety packet with a list of documents that you can collect and give to us for safekeeping. And then we'll also give you a strategy session with a lawyer and a special phone line for you to call if anything happens. So we do have something for people who aren't eligible for legal status. Okay, and then this is the last question, and then I'll give you the action tip. And because it looks like we're just arriving at our little grocery store. Can I drive people to the airport? That's a great question. I have not seen CBP stopping drivers at the airport. I feel like I did hear of one person who got detained as an Uber driver dropping someone off at an airport up in the Northeast, but I can't remember the specifics of that. I recently took a short cruise, like a boat cruise, and they were checking the ID of the drivers when we went into the boat area, the dock area. So I would be careful about that. I think that I don't think it's happening wide scale, but it is. I think it's something that you should be aware of, and maybe not do airport to be extra safe. All right, guys. Here's your action tip. Congress has reintroduced the DREAM Act. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be fun? So text DREAM Act to 78757. And then that'll give you some action items that you can do to contact your legislators to help push through the DREAM Act. So text DREAM Act to 78757. 57. All right, team, we're almost at our location. And then stick with us on our socials. We'll be doing some more videos where we're going to the little grocery store. And I'll see you. Nos vemos el jueves en español. Adiós.